my biggest thing right now with Carson is no matter what happens, he needs to be durable no matter where he goes. So he's got to pass all physical exams and he's got to show that he can play this game for the long haul. Number two, no matter what team he goes to, they have to be able to take that roster hit, that massive cap that's coming. Philly's got to eat some of that if he doesn't get traded before the active rosters are set in for the season. So I think that there's like a roster bonus of like 15 and $20 million for Carson Wentz being on the team. So they definitely have to get rid of him before the month is over. And number three, I think Carson publicly going about saying what he said in the media this week, which was I prefer to go to Indianapolis, puts a big strain on Philly, and here's why. So obviously, when you listen to offers from other teams for a star player or any position, for the most part, the leverage is in the team's hands because the team has the ultimate decision to go out there and say, "Hey, we're going to trade you here, no matter what it is you say." Now, Carson coming out and saying that, yo, I'd rather play for the Colts than the Chicago Bears, that kind of puts Chicago in a little bit of a bind because if the Eagles do force the trade to go to Chicago, you're getting a disgruntled player, you're getting an unhappy quarterback, and you're getting somebody that you know that you may not be able to give an extension to because he doesn't want to be there as it is. What if Carson holds out? What if Carson plays terrible? What if Carson becomes a cancer in that locker room? You know what I mean? Like he already has a reputation that's preceding him to the next team, no matter where it is. So that takes away a little bit of power from Philly because Philly's not going to go and force a trade because Chicago's going to back off and say, yo, I don't want this guy if he doesn't want to be here. And then that means that they have to listen to the Colts offer or they have to listen to another team's offer that may not be as big of a haul as the Bears would have given them. And I think if I'm reading correctly, For the Culture has reported, again, For the Culture, the podcast that I follow for the Indianapolis Colts, Josh and Jason, or should I say Luke and Jason have reported that Ballard has given in his final offer, and it's pretty much Philadelphia is kind of just listening to everybody else. And Indy isn't budging. Indy isn't going any higher. It doesn't matter if they get outbid. They're not going to outbid that person. So it's pretty much a take it or leave it from Chris Ballard at this point. There is no speculation or information in terms of what the actual trade consists of. But there have been rumors again and speculation that a lot of trade packages do include a Zach Ertz in the deal. So that does include additional picks from other teams and or player swap. So Philadelphia, in theory, could be unloading two of their bigger contracts to free up some cap space to give Jalen Hurts some assistance. But I think if it is Indy, it's not going to be as big of a haul. And for me as a Colts fan, that's something that I like to hear. We get to solidify the tight end position, which is a position that we continuously rotate between Jack Doyle, Mo Alley Cox. This season was Trey Burton. The season before that was Eric Ebron. And Jack has been battling injuries for the majority of his career. Trey Burton was a 1 year deal. Mo Alley Cox is a majority run blocking tight end. So, I mean, if we get Zach Ertz, that gives us a viable threat to actually have underneath and in the middle of the field. That's one. And number two, as of right this second, the Colts don't have an active quarterback on the roster that isn't Jacob Eason out of Washington from last year, our fourth round pick. So we don't necessarily have any depth or any idea as to what is going on. When Matt Stafford got traded to the Rams, we kind of fell apart. There wasn't really much of a backup as far as I was aware of. And then when Derek Carr became available, I believe the Colts looked at him, but I think that Vegas wants a little bit too much as well. He is a little bit better of a quarterback than Carson Wentz as of late, in my opinion. So I think that Vegas has a right to ask for a little bit more. But if Carson Wentz can come in, we have a top three offensive line in this league. We have a great up and coming run game with Jonathan Taylor, Naeem Hines, and if Marlon Mack comes back, we'll see what happens. If on a vet minimum deal, I say no more than that. Um, if Zach comes, you have a healthy Zach Ertz, and you have a couple of more tight ends that are veterans in the locker room, and you have one of the best defenses in the league. So Carson immediately comes into a lot better of a situation, and I think that him playing with Frank Reich, who was the offensive coordinator of the Eagles in their Super Bowl year, makes the relationship an automatic A plus, and I think that
Yeah.
puts us in a better position to win in the future.
And I was just going to make that point too, just because I think for Carson Wentz, I think having that continuity with Frank Wright would be an instant advantage if you're looking at a new team, and specifically with the Colts. They have an outstanding offensive line. They've got a stacked running back core. They have some solid, reliable receivers to throw to, and some good tight ends to throw to as well. So when you look at the situation that Indianapolis has, I think that's one of the probably more viable places where Carson could actually end up going. And I think if he goes out of his way to ingratiate himself with with his new teammates, I think if he goes there with go with a clean new slate, I think it'll work wonders for him. And you could really see Carson Wentz's career be completely revitalized if he ends up going to Indianapolis. Obviously, we kind of have to see if that actually comes to fruition or not. But I think it would be a solid move for both parties just because the Eagles would be unloading Carson Wentz. They wouldn't have to deal with him anymore. And then Carson Wentz ends up going to a coach that he produced really well for with Frank Reich back in 2017. He was the offensive coordinator for the Eagles during that time. And I think it would work wonders for Indianapolis. And to be honest with you, I think Indianapolis would be a solid top 3, top 4 team in the AFC if he plays well for him. It's obviously indicative if he plays well for him, but I think he would have more than enough confidence in the offensive line to protect him. He's got more than enough weapons to throw to, and he's got a solid running back core. So I don't think he would even have to really, he wouldn't have this sensation or this thought process of, I got to carry the team. They have a very solid team around him already. I think just adding him to the mix would kind of even be similar to what Tom Brady went to with the Bucs this past season. The Bucs had a solid running back game. They added it with Fournette even more. They had great wide receivers in Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, and they had a solid tight end core. Very similar to what Indianapolis has right now. And I think if you just integrate Carson Wentz into that situation, I think it could work wonders for him. And you're a Colts fan, and I don't really see there's some hesitation from you about this possibility or this
Yeah,
trade
of course.
coming, if it ends up happening that way. But I do think that I think it's a trade worth pursuing. I really do.
So like about a week ago, to quote Bobby Shmurda, free Bobby. So I don't know. I'm thinking here, and like me and my dad, obviously, my dad's probably one of the bigger Colt fans out there, just like myself. And I'm sitting there like a week ago, and I'm like, I don't know, like I really don't want it. I was like 90% sure I didn't want it because of Philly's asking price. I trust my GM and Chris Ballard to know that I'm not giving up 2 picks for a guy that had one of the worst seasons in his, probably the worst season in his career, and that obviously knocks his market price down absolutely low. But if we can get Carson on a solid deal, and I mean like solid in the sense of a first round pick, you have to come to terms with it just to get a quarterback of his stature. Even though he's not as good as he used to be, you have to give a first to Philly. I've accepted that part. If this trade happens, I think it's a first, a couple of later picks. I don't know if it's third or fourth. I know Ballard values his second to fourth round picks. I don't know what Philly's going to ask for in return. If Zach comes, I don't know if we have to give additional picks. I don't know the player personnel that would be packaging in the group for a trade. But if we give a first, some later round picks, maybe a player or two, depending on who else is packaged in this deal, Philly gives us some form of a pick in compensation because of the amount of the hit we have to take on our cap. I think that kind of make or breaks the trade. If it doesn't happen, I'm not going to be heartbroken about it because we get to save all of that capital and do what we normally do, which is draft extremely well under Chris Ballard. I believe he's been voted GM of the year 2 or 3 times by his peers since he's been on the Colts. So I mean that says exponential words about him. I mean, drafting Darius Leonard out of South Carolina State, nobody knew who he was. Drafting an offensive lineman with the 6th overall pick, trading back and getting him. We could have went and got Bradley Chubb out of North Carolina State, and we ended up trading back to get Quinn Nelson. We drafted Rock Yassin, Kari Willis. I mean, you name it. We have some studs on this team, and the defense is what it is in large because of Ballard and his decision making. And Ballard doesn't overspend, and Ballard does not uh, overcompensate. He definitely will not try to outbid other teams if he feels that his voice or his trade is not being outheard. Then he says, you know what, it isn't meant to be, and I'll make it up somewhere else in free agency. We have top 3 cap space, which would go away if we get Carson, and it would definitely diminish, especially if we get Zach as well. So that's why I say, Philadelphia definitely needs to give us a little bit more than just Carson. If it is just Carson, give us another pick so we can have something in the future to pick up. If Zach does come, I trust Ballard to know that he's not going to give up, an arm and a leg to go and get 2 studs.
I couldn't agree with you more, man. I think I'm just like it's like I said at the beginning of this Wentz discussion. I think if they're able to come to terms and they're able to kind of figure out the draft compensation or the draft picks that they're going to have to give up back and forth between both teams. I think this really does work out both. I think this works out well for both teams moving forward. It's just whether or not that he actually gets traded.